Well, welcome to Centerpoint. We're glad you're all here, and we are in the middle of a series on family values. And I just want to remind you, and if you didn't get one of these, you can pick them up at the lobby desk. We're getting you to kind of make a family crest for your family, and especially those of you with kids, I just think this would be a fun thing to color these values in and make something you can hang on the wall. And it's just a great reminder, like the first week we talked about love, that we want to have families that love each other and care about each other. And then we talked about purity the second week, about just being sexually pure and waiting until you're married to have sex and keeping purity inside of the marriage. And one of the stories I told you is that I always say to people, you know, if you're dating and you start to struggle, don't stay at home, go to Denny's, you know what I mean? And people text me pictures once in a while, and I got to show you one. I did get their permission. They texted me a picture from Denny's. These are the Garcias. And I said to them, you guys are married, you can go anywhere you want. But they sent me a picture from Denny's anyway, so. Then you've got the family value of forgiveness here. Mitch talked last week about, forgiving people, forgive each other. And today we're talking about the family value of serving each other. So the ushers are going to come down and they're going to start handing around a brawny paper towel, okay? So just pull a towel off like this and hold on to it. And I'm going to tell you what to do with it at the end of the service. But go ahead and grab some paper towels, man. And you guys take those home with you, and you'll know what to do in a few minutes here. So in the meantime, let's look at our notes. So John chapter 13. You guys ready? John chapter 13, let's look at this story about Jesus, a familiar story. It says in John 13:1, it says, it was just before the Passover festival, and Jesus knew that the hour had come for him to leave this world and go to the Father. Having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. Now, that's a really interesting statement because Jesus says, I know I'm getting ready to die, and I want to show my love to my followers. Not just with the cross, but he's going to do something else here. And that word loved is the Greek word agape love. It means unconditional love. And actually in the next 3 chapters, he is going to use that word 31 times. This is all about love. What he does in this chapter and on through the cross, he is loving his followers. So it tells us in John 13:2, it says, the evening meal was in progress and the devil had already prompted Judas, the son of Simon Iscariot, to betray Jesus. So the devil had prompted him to do this, and it says in verse 3 that Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power and that he had come from God and was returning to God. So he got up from the meal, he took off his outer clothing, he wrapped a towel around his waist. Now, don't miss what it's saying there. It's saying Jesus is aware that he is God. Jesus is aware of his mission. Jesus is aware that he's a Messiah. And in that awareness, he gets up from the meal and he puts on the apron, as it were. He puts on the act of serving. Not just an act, but he actually is going to serve his followers. It says that after that, he poured water into a basin and began to wash the disciples' feet, drying them with the towel that was wrapped around him. Now, it was customary in Bible times, because you walked with sandals on, to wash people's feet when they came into your house. If you had a servant, the servant would do it. It was considered menial work. It was considered low work. And if you didn't have a servant, someone in the family would volunteer, I'll go ahead and wash the feet of the guests. But when these disciples walked into the room, I guess everybody thought, oh, somebody else will do it. Let somebody else do it. It's not my job to do it. And no one washed any of the feet of the disciples. I like how Chuck Swindoll describes it. He says the disciples had proud hearts and dirty feet. Every time I tell this story, I think about a story that I read probably 25 years ago about a woman that worked for a guy, and every week on Thursday, I should say, he would disappear for a couple of hours. And she always wondered where he went. In fact, she kind of wondered if he was out having a drink. And one day she was in the library, and the librarian said to her, it's so nice what your boss does here at the library every Thursday. And she said, well, what does my boss do at the library every Thursday? And she said, well, your boss asked a homeless person one day, saw a homeless person limping, and asked him why he was limping. And he said because his toenails couldn't get cut, and they had grown into the skin and, created an ingrown toenail. And so he realized that a lot of homeless people struggled with this. And she said, your boss on Thursdays for 2 hours cuts the toenails of homeless people here at the public library. Now, I always think about that story because the feet are not the most beautiful part of the body, are they? And you don't have to be homeless to say, my feet are not the most beautiful part of the body, you know? And to touch feet and work with feet. And that's what Jesus does. He grabs these disciples' feet and he starts to care for their feet and to wash their feet. And it tells us in verse 6, it says, then he came to Simon Peter, who said to him, Lord, are you going to wash my feet? And Jesus replied, you do not realize now what I am doing, but later you will understand. No, said Peter, you shall never wash my feet. Now, in the English language, a double negative becomes a positive. But those of you who speak Spanish know this, that in Spanish, a double negative intensifies the effect. It's the same thing in the Greek language, the language the Bible was written in. A double negative intensifies the effect. And Peter looks at Jesus. Jesus comes around with the bowl. He's getting ready to wash Peter's feet. And Peter looks at him and says, no, no way. No, you'll never wash my feet. Now, Peter understood who Jesus was. He had just a few days earlier declared that Jesus was the Messiah, the Christ. And when the Christ came around, when the Messiah came around, when he realized that the God who hung the planets in place, the God of the universe, was going to wash his feet, Peter said, no way, you're not going to do it. And I love this picture that my wife and I have in our house of Peter getting his feet washed by Jesus. And you just see Jesus picking up that big clunky foot of Peter's, and Peter is there just like this, man. He doesn't want it to happen. He can't believe Jesus is doing it. So Peter says, no, you'll never wash my feet. And Jesus answered, unless I wash you, you have no part with me. Now, what's Jesus saying there? He's saying this act of washing your feet is symbolic of something much more important. In just a few hours, he's going to wash Peter clean from head to toe. He's going to take all the shame and all the guilt and all the sin away by washing away his sins on the cross. But right now, he's symbolizing it as well as an act of servanthood by washing the feet of Peter. So he says, unless I wash you, you have no part with me. And then, Lord, Peter replied, not just my feet, but my hands and my head as well. Peter was always an all or nothing guy. He's like, well, if you're going to wash my feet, you're going to wash all of me. And Jesus says, those who have had a bath only need to wash their feet. Their whole body is clean. I think Jesus kind of laughed when he said that. Peter, it's okay. You're clean, man. You don't smell. No BO here. Okay, it's all right. And so Jesus answered him, though, and he says, and you are clean, though not every one of you, for he knew who was going to betray him. And that was why he said, not everyone was clean. In other words, Jesus knows who's going to betray him. And he knows in that room, Judas is there. And Jesus says, man, not everyone in this room is clean. Now it tells us in John 13:12, it says, when he had finished washing their feet, he put on his clothes and returned to his place. Do you understand what I have done for you? He asked them. And I want to pose that question to you. Do you understand what Jesus was doing for us when he washed the disciples' feet? Do you understand why the God of the universe, this God in the flesh, why he would pick up feet and he would do the job of a menial servant? Do you understand what Jesus was up to in this act? He explains it. He says in verse 13, you call me teacher and Lord, and rightly so, for that is what I am. Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet. Now, I don't know how many of you have ever been to a foot washing ceremony. How many of you have ever been to a foot washing ceremony? Okay, some churches do that. Today, we're going to do something different, and we're going to ask you to slip your shoes and your socks off, and the ushers are going to come down, and they're going to dismiss you row by row, and I'm going to be up here in front, and I want to wash your feet as you walk by. No, I'm kidding you. Okay. I could see that. No! I should have had a pedicure this week. No. Yeah. Hey, there's nothing wrong if you've been to a foot washing ceremony. I've been to them. In fact, one time I had someone wash my feet in front of about 300 people at a conference I was going to speak at. And he's washing my feet, and he gets to the bottom, and he's like going up and down like this, and it tickles so much I want to laugh. It was crazy, okay? Nothing wrong with a foot washing ceremony. But I will say this. I think there's something more than a ceremony in this text. It would be easy to make it all about a ceremony. Oh, if we just wash each other's feet, then we've done what the passage says. But Jesus is asking us to do something far more difficult. Jesus is asking us to live our lives every day the way that he lived. He's asking us as we walk out in the world to pick up our bowl, to pick up our towel, to put on our apron, and to serve the people that are around us. In fact, he drives it home in verse 16. He says, "Very truly I tell you, no servant is greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than the one who sent him. Now that you know these things, you will be blessed if you do them." He says, "Follow my example." Now today, I want to take this whole thing of serving each other and I want to apply it to the family, because this is a family values series. I want to talk to you about 6 words that describe what it's like to be a servant to your family. And I want to remind you again, you may be here and you're single, but you've got a parent, you've got brothers and sisters probably, you may have a roommate, you may have a boyfriend or girlfriend. I'm just telling you, this family thing isn't just for married couples, it's for all of us. And the first word that describes a family that serves each other, number 1 on your outline, is humility. Humility. Let's go back to the text and look at it. It says, Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power and that he had come from God and was returning to God. So he got up from the meal and wrapped a towel around his waist. You just can't ride over that lightly. Jesus is totally aware that he's divine. He's God. But he gets up and he takes the role of a servant. You would expect Jesus, when he knows he's divine, when he knows he's God, you would expect him to say, "Hey, somebody here wash my feet. I'm God and you're not. I deserve to have my feet washed. Come on, one of you get up and do this foot washing thing for me." But no, Jesus wraps a towel around himself. He takes the look of a servant. He pours water into a basin. And one by one, he walks around the room and he washes the feet of his disciples. That's why, as I said, for Peter, this was a total cringe moment. He knows the God of the universe is washing his feet. Dallas Willard, a famous theologian, as I've told you before, he calls this the law of inversion, where Jesus turns things upside down. It's described in Matthew chapter 20. Jesus is talking in Matthew chapter 20 about how in the world we live in, everyone wants to power up and be served. And man, if that was true in Jesus' day, it's certainly true today. I have my rights. I deserve this. This is what people should be doing for me. And Jesus looks at us in verse 26 and he says, "Not so with you Christians. If you're a follower of me," he says, "you're not going to live like that. Instead, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant, and whoever wants to be first must be your slave. Just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many." Again, Dallas Willard calls this the law of inversion. I've told you before that a guy named George Stratton invented a pair of goggles that actually invert things. They turn them upside down. That when you put those goggles on, you're literally walking, upside down. The trees are hanging upside down. You pour orange juice, it goes upside down. It actually would go up, wouldn't it? And it just inverts everything. Now, the interesting thing, I was reading about this week, is that when you put on those goggles that invert everything, the first day you're sick to your stomach. The second day you feel a little better. And by the third day you adjust and it appears normal. Here's the thing about the world we live in. The world we live in thinks it's normal to demand your rights, to power up, to say people should be serving me. People should be waiting on me. What's wrong with those people that they would treat me like this? That's the world we live in. And folks, it's going to take some time, man, to invert this thing and realize, hear me now, this is huge, that in the kingdom of heaven, the servant is the greatest of all. That's what Jesus says. It is a great thing to serve your husband. It is a great thing to serve your wife. It's a great thing to serve your parents. It's a great thing to serve your brothers and sisters. It's a great thing to serve a boyfriend or girlfriend. It is a great thing, Jesus says, in your family and in your world to be a humble servant. So the first word is humility. The second word is initiative. I'm just kind of fascinated by this one little statement. Jesus got up from the table. He's at the table. He's eating food. He's reclined on a couch or a pillow like they did in those days. Jesus had to get up. He had to take the initiative. When the disciples walked in the room, I think they must have been thinking, it's not my job, let someone else do it. The pitcher of water is there, the towel is there, the dirty feet are there, the need is there. But everybody, and this happens in our family, doesn't it? Everybody is hoping that someone else will wash the feet. Have you ever noticed this? There's 3 types of people in a family. There's people who refuse to help. There's people who will help if they're asked to help. And then there's people that will take the initiative and help without being asked. Now, I think most of us and most people and probably most of the disciples fit in the second category. If someone asks us to do something, we'll do it. I think if Jesus had looked at the disciples and said, hey, Thaddeus, come on, Peter's feet don't smell so good. Can you go get that water and wash his feet? I think Thaddeus would have done what happens in families a lot. He would have said, all right, don't know why it's always got to be me. You know, I think that's the attitude of most, you know. If they're asked to help, they're help. But you know what? There's this third level, and this is what we're aiming for, to serve without being asked, to take the initiative. Now this morning, at 2:30 in the morning, our cat, which always sleeps on our bed, jumped off our bed in a dramatic fashion. Like, it usually doesn't wake me up, but I mean, it was like dramatic. It was sudden, and it woke me up when the cat jumped off the bed. And then I heard it just a few seconds later. It went right outside our bedroom door, and I heard it throw up. And so I'm in bed, and I'm thinking, I wonder if Karen heard that. It's her cat. I mean, she cleans the litter box. And so I'm there, and I'm thinking that, and all of a sudden, I hear Karen say, Dane. And I said, yeah. She said, are you awake? I said, yeah. She said, I think the cat threw up. I said, yeah. And then she said this, I kid you not, she said this to me. She said, I'm going to do you a favor, and I'm going to give you a great story for your sermon today, and I'll let you get up and clean that up. That's what she said to me. And I said, thank you. And she said, you're welcome. Now, have you noticed this? Every family has a job that no one wants to do. Have you guys noticed that? And I want you to take a minute and whisper to the person next to you. Just tell them the job in your family that no one wants to do. Maybe it's cleaning the toilets, mowing the lawn, putting the dishes away. Just tell the person next to you the job that no one wants to do. Okay, what is it? Yell them out. Just give me a few of them. What is it? All of them, all of them. Cleaning the shower. Over here, cleaning the shower. Clean the chicken coop. I'm glad you have the chicken coop, Leon. Okay, anyone else? Anyone else? Laundry. Yeah, laundry. There's a big one. Okay, we all have jobs in every family that nobody wants to do. But look what happens when you take initiative. Proverbs 6, verse 6. It says, go to the ant, you sluggard. Consider its ways and be wise. It has no commander, no overseer or ruler, and yet it stores its provisions in summer and gathers its food at harvest. You know what he's saying there? No one has to tell the ant what to do. The ant just does it on its own. The ant just takes initiative. He says, be like the ants. Take initiative. Don't wait till someone in your family has to say, will you do this job? He goes on, verse 9. He says, how long will you lie there, you sluggard? When will you get up from your sleep? He says, man, when will you get up and clean up the cat throw up, man? I was reading a book. It's one of my favorite books on marriage by Walter Wangerin, and it's called As for Me and My House. And he has this quote in the book, and I just love this quote. He says, I know a fellow who, if his wife is not home, is constitutionally incapable of rising from his chair and fixing a sandwich for himself. He can't. He doesn't even entertain the notion. He waits until his wife returns and then he asks her for the sandwich. And I read that and I thought, man, I can make a sandwich, but there are so many things like that that I just think, oh, my wife will take care of that. And so the second word, man, if you want to be a servant, the second word is initiative. It's easy to hope someone else will do it. If the baby cries long enough, maybe my husband will change the diaper. If I stuff one more thing into this trash can, maybe my wife will empty it. If I leave one more dish in the sink, maybe my parents will do the dishes. But Jesus didn't say, I'm going to let someone else do this. Jesus stood up, put the towel on, and he served his disciples. So that's the second thing. Here's the third one, grace. Grace. It's easy to miss this little line in the text. He knew who was going to betray him. Jesus washed all 12 disciples' feet. Wouldn't it be easy to say, okay, Peter, I'll wash your feet. I know you're a good guy. I'll wash Thaddeus's feet, but Judas, you're on your own. And see, what happens in families sometimes is we start to build up resentment. We start to see people's weaknesses. They've hurt us or they've let us down. And it's going to be tempted to say, you know what? I'm not going to serve the way I used to. I'm not going to take care of them the way I'm going to develop an attitude here. But look what Paul says. He says, on the contrary, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he's thirsty, give him something to drink. In doing this, you will heap burning coals on his head. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. He's quoting Jesus. What did Jesus say to do? Serve your enemy. Lay down your life for the people even around you, even if they haven't done everything you want them to do. I'm reading a book right now about a pastor, and his name is Mulanga, and he's a pastor in Zambia. And when he first got into ministry, he got a ride in a car, had to travel somewhere, with another man who claimed to be a Christian. Well, it turned out the car was stolen. And he ended up serving 2 years in prison with that guy for supposedly stealing a car that he didn't steal. And Mulanga, when he was in prison, man, he had so much resentment, he says, so much anger against this guy. And then the man got sick. The guy that accused him of stealing the car got sick. His enemy got sick. And he had diarrhea. Horrible diarrhea. In fact, he describes it, he says, as he was laying on the bed, he says the diarrhea just kept coming out and out and out and out. And he said no one would help him. You know, this is a foreign country. They don't have people that come in and clean up prisoners like that. They have to clean up each other. No other prisoner would clean this guy up. And so what Mulanga did is he remembered this very verse that I read, and he picked up the bowl, he picked up the towel, and he went. And for 2 weeks, he had to clean the diarrhea off the very man who lied about him and got him in prison. Jesus says, love your enemy. He says, do good to your enemy. Don't be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. Families that serve, they show grace to each other. Here's the fourth thing, perseverance. Perseverance. Here it is. Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet. Now, I want you to see the wording of that. Jesus didn't say, now that I've washed your feet, come wash my feet. Oh man, form a line. We'd all love to wash Jesus' feet. No, he says, now that I have served you, wash each other's feet. It's not Jesus' feet we don't like, it's each other's feet we don't like. And he says, I've served you, I want you to serve each other. And this is where it gets tough. Because sometimes serving our family 52 weeks a year, day in, day out, is the last thing you want to do. A woman went to Mother Teresa one time and said, I want to come over to Calcutta, India, and I want to serve with you. She took care of the dying in Calcutta, India, as you know. And so she says, I want to come to Calcutta. Mother Teresa wrote her back and said, stay home, find your own Calcutta. I'm just going to say something. Now, I love missions trips. I love it that our youth department does them all the time, and our children's department, our young adults are doing them right now. It is, tell me if you agree with this, it is far easier to take a week and go serve on a missions trip somewhere with a bunch of strangers than it is to come home and serve our family 7 days a week, 52 weeks a year. I mean, it takes perseverance. It takes endurance. It takes hanging in there. Bob Russell says, great occasions for serving God come seldom. Little ones surround us daily. There are little opportunities to be like Jesus every time you open the door of your house. And Paul says, let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. So that's the word endurance, perseverance, if you want to call it that. And then number 5, gratitude. I was just amazed when I looked at the Bible this week, all the times that it says thank you. Paul says, I've not stopped giving thanks for you. He says, I thank my God every time I remember you. May the Lord show kindness to you as you have shown to me. I thank my God through Jesus Christ for all of you. I thank God as I constantly remember you in my prayers. People need to know we appreciate what they do. Just those 2 words, thank you, mean so much. Here's what often happens in families. We get into a cycle. We feel like we're having to do stuff other people should be doing. We start to resent it. No one says thank you. We start to form grudges, and we get in this bad negative cycle. What I'm calling on you to do today is to reverse that cycle. To say, I'm going to be like Jesus. I'm going to serve. Even when I've got some resentments, I'm going to serve. And then I'm calling on all of us, man, to look and to say thank you. Think about what it's like for someone to cook dinner every single night for you, and you never say thank you. Think what it's like to have someone mow the lawn for you every week, and you never say thank you. The lawn looks beautiful. Think what it's like to have someone do your laundry. You think that underwear cleans up by itself? No, and they never hear the words thank you. And what we can do, man, is we can just coat this whole family service thing with gratitude. Thank you, thank you. There are tons of jobs around the house that go done that often we just forget to say thank you for. And then here's the last one, Outlasters. The last word is Outlasters. Look at this last thing. It says in John 13:15, I have set an example that you should do as I have done for you. Now that you know these things, you will be blessed if you do them. There is an eternal reward for serving, whether it's in the church, outside the church, or in your family like we're talking about today. Let me put it this way. When you serve, you are doing something that will last forever. It will outlast your life here on earth. Now, I don't know how many of you remember this, but in 1992, Hurricane Andrew hit Florida, the state of Florida. 117,000 houses were destroyed by Hurricane Andrew. But in the midst of that 117,000 houses that were destroyed, 27 houses stood intact. What made the difference between the 117,000 and the 27? How could 27 houses stand up to something that wreaked this kind of devastation and havoc? What was the difference between those 27 houses and everything else? Any guesses? The difference was those 27 houses were built by Habitat for Humanity. They were built by volunteers. And the difference was this. I know a lot of you are in construction and this is what you need to do, and you need to just follow the code. That's what you're expected to do. But they followed the code for those other houses. And the code says that there should be a nail, one nail every 17 inches when you nail the siding onto a house. But those volunteers for Habitat for Humanity went crazy with the nail gun. Boom, 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 boom. In fact, they researched it and they discovered there was a nail every inch. Can you imagine that? Every inch. And those 27 houses stood up. They were built by volunteers. I'll tell you what, when you volunteer to serve, outside, inside the church, or today, like I'm talking about, in your family, it is going to outlast this life. It's going to stand up. And one of my favorite verses in the Bible is this one right here. If anyone gives even a cup of cold water. I love the way Jesus words it. Even a cup of cold water. Some of you are caretakers. You're taking care of your elderly parents or someone else, and you're giving a cup of cold water. Some of you, you've got a disabled child, special needs child, and you're caring for them. Maybe they can't even say thank you to you. Some of you are giving a cup of cold water to that little kid. And what does he say? Every single cup of cold water, every single one of them, God notices it. He notices it. And he marks it down. And he says, if anyone gives even a cup of cold water to one of these little ones, because he is my disciple, I tell you the truth, he will, come on, read it with me. He will what? Certainly not lose his reward. When you serve, you are doing something that will outlast this life on earth. It will last forever. There is an eternal reward that will last forever. So I'm going to ask you to take your paper towel home and hang on to it until you do something for someone in your family. Now, I know some of you are single. You don't live close to your families. You can do something long distance. Maybe your mom would like a phone call, okay? So, and then you throw it away when you're done, okay? But I did this about 3 years ago. I had you guys do this, and it was so fun to hear the stories. Email me and tell me what happened. I'd love to hear it. Keep the paper towel. Put it somewhere where it reminds you. Here, Karen, I used mine this morning. And there you go. Yeah. Lord, I thank you so much, God, that you took the role of a servant, that you did not demand your rights in that room. You set an example. You, the one who deserved to have your feet washed, you, the one that deserve it, were willing to wash the feet of others. And you've told us to go do likewise. So, Lord, I just pray this week that we can be a blessing to our family as we lay down our life for each other. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. God bless you. I'm glad you came to church. If you need prayer, come on down.